All right, how is everybody tonight? Happy Sunday. Yay. So for the last 3 weeks now, we have been launching an awareness campaign in honor of SAAM, SA Awareness Month. So each week we've been focusing on different topics surrounding protecting children from SA, things that we can do and things that we should be aware of. And most of it always falls back on education, awareness, and there are some things we can do in regards to change. So today we're going to be discussing stats and reporting. So this week we posted a couple articles regarding stats and reporting. All this information and these numbers are specific to Canada. Our organization is located in Canada, so we do focus on Canadian stats and laws, as that's something that we feel requires a lot of work, especially when we start comparing to other countries close to us like the USA. So we're hoping that we can bring enough awareness to other parents and community members so we can start seeing some of these much needed changes being implemented. And we will discuss a lot of that next week when we talk about legislative changes and law reform, which will be specific to, again, things that we can do to help change things on a government side. A lot of what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks is stuff we can do in regards to change within the communities and just societal change in general. As the more support we start seeing for victims of SA, the higher reporting numbers go up, which is great. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about that today. So we have lots of statistics, just a bit of a trigger warning. There's some numbers and stats here that I believe a lot of people will find quite shocking. Before we get into that, I'll just do a quick introduction about our organization. I'm horrible at introductions. I just jump right into the info. So our organization is called Survivors Fighting for Change Foundation. We are a registered nonprofit, and we work hard to connect with communities and support victims. Our goal and purpose is to promote awareness by providing information, promote education with that information, as well as promote change through our federal and community petitions that we provide. And again, next week we'll discuss more about the petitions and how those work and the things that we're doing with them and the changes that we're trying to make happen with those and how people can get in touch with us to get access to those petitions so that you can help be a part of the solution as well. So that will be fun. But this week we'll focus mostly on just the stats and reporting. So our organization also supports victims who are currently going through the process of reporting and the court process, whether that be getting ready for trials or getting ready to meet with an investigator or the Crown. We just like to provide supports. We help provide information and do research. We do not provide any legal advice or any advice in general at all. So everything that we do tell and share is all just information that we're sharing with people based on research that we've done. And all this information is provided by several different resources. All of the information that we're discussing tonight, a lot of it has been posted on our social media in the last week, so you guys can find the links and resources for that there. But a lot of The information that we're sharing comes from the Canada Centre for Justice Statistics, Uniform Crime Reporting Surveys, National Centre for Missing Persons and Identified Remains, the 2004 Harrison Hansen study, Government of Canada websites, a CSA group standards research. So it's a child safety and privacy in the digital age. We'll be discussing that in a little bit more detail next week as well. A Justice Institute for British Columbia, Victim Services, cybertips.ca, race.org, and sexassault.ca. So lots of great organizations and websites, and they have tons of information on their sites. So we definitely recommend that people also do their own research and involve their family and their children in some of that research as well, just to help include them in that. It helps them take it a little bit more seriously. So we'll get started here. If anybody has any questions or needs support or wants to reach out to our organization in order to find out how you can help us further pursue our goals, please reach out. Our email address is survivorsfighting@gmail.com. You can also reach out through social media. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those fun things. Love social media. So today, again, we're just going to discuss the stats and information regarding reporting. This is really going to help people realize why the information we've been sharing for the last 2 weeks regarding community safety and online safety for children is so important for parents to be making themselves aware of and to be educating their children on. So victim statistics are a sad truth that exists among every society. These numbers don't pertain to any one specific unless they're specifically mentioned in that statistic. And again, these are Canadian statistics. So SA and CSA, which is child SA, are highly misunderstood crimes. Understanding the common misconceptions that are prevalent in our society, along with the facts, help you better understand SA and educate others. Again, education, guys, that's the biggest thing. And not just educating ourselves as adults. We need to start educating our children in age-appropriate ways. And again, tons of resources available for that. We shared a bunch of information over the last couple weeks. And if anyone needs information about that, please reach out. We're happy to share that with you. SA is about power and control, not desire. More than 110 children go missing every day in Canada. Only 5% of SAs are reported to the police. This rate has remained stable over the past 15 years. So yes, numbers have increased over the past 15 years. We do see more reports coming in. However, they do believe that we are still only seeing about 5% reported, and I believe this was last surveyed about 2017, 2015, so that could potentially be a little bit higher. I do believe I read a report saying 6% now, so we could be sitting closer to 6%. SA is considered the most underreported violent crime in Canada. That's something that people really need to be aware of, because that's unfortunate, and we definitely need to see some more changes in regards to that. So 1 in 4 females will be assaulted before the age of 18. 1 in 8 males will be assaulted before the age of 18. Again, this is in Canada. Less than 2% of reported assaults are false reports, so proven to be false reports. So the idea and the stigma that continues to exist that majority of reports are false reports is far from the truth, and that 2% reporting false report rate has been consistent for quite some time. So we really need to break the mentality and get rid of the idea that majority of reports are false or made up in order to get back at somebody or out of retaliation for whatever reason, as statistics actually show us that that's not the case at all. That's the farthest thing from the truth. Again, over 80% of offenders are friends or family of the victim. They're well known to the victim and trusted by the victim. 60% of SA victims are under the age of 17 in Canada, so 60%. 83% of disabled females will experience SA during their lifetime. So at some point in their lifetime, 83% of females with a disability will experience some form of SA. That's horrifying. I have a little sister with disabilities, and I think just about everybody in this country knows somebody who has a disability. And again, that just adds another layer of vulnerability. And that's something that offenders really look for. So if you have somebody that's close to you in your life who does suffer with some disability, definitely you want to be a little bit more cautious and really make sure that you're educating yourself as well as that person as best as you can to help protect them from anything that could potentially happen. 1 in 5 of all SAs involve a weapon. That is terrifying. 1 in 5. 62% of victims are physically injured in the attack, and 9% are beaten severely or disfigured. So that, again, awful and horrible to even think of, that these numbers are this high, because I don't think a lot of us really realize how serious of an issue this is and how common it is until we hear it and we start reading about it and we start looking into it. I know I certainly didn't. And I know most people that I talk to are very shocked when they start realizing the numbers and hearing the data and seeing where that information and data is coming from. It definitely creates some concern for those citizens once they start to realize. So I think it's important that we start making ourselves aware, so that way we can start taking the necessary steps and precautions to start preventing these forms of abuse and protecting our children in turn, right? So before Me Too, so the Me Too movement, I believe that started around 2015. I think 2016 was when it really kind of kicked off. So before that, there was an average of 59 SA victims reporting per day in Canada, which increased to 25% after the Me Too movement had really kicked off. So these figures translate to an average of 74 victims reporting per day. And in 2017, reported CSA, so child SA, averaged 22 children per day. So this represents a 118% increase from 2010 to 2017. So as we can see, the Me Too movement really made a big difference in helping to increase the overall number just by 25% within a couple of years. And then we also see reports of CSA increasing quite a bit just from 2010 to 2017. So again, at the end of that same period where that Me Too movement was happening and was very recognized, and people were paying attention to that. So that made a huge difference. So as we can see, that community support and societal support for victims to speak out and report their abuse made a huge difference. And we also seen how much of a difference that made in regards to law reform. We saw a lot of bills be introduced. We saw a lot of mandatory training for officers, and now we're seeing mandatory training for judges in certain jurisdictions to ensure that they are familiar with the effects of these crimes, as well as how these crimes are committed and how offenders are able to get away with it for typically periods of time, long periods of time before being reported, and sometimes never being reported. So it's nice to see that that definitely sparked a change. And the more we keep that momentum going and continue that across society, the more we're supporting victims to continue to report and speak out, and the more we're pushing lawmakers and our politicians to continue to look at legislation and introduce ways that we can help better protect children. And then also just by us being more aware and opening up that conversation, being able to have that conversation, that opens up doors for our children to also be more open about those topics and have those conversations. So this helps prevent abuse, as that is not good for an offender who's looking for a target. A child who openly discusses these matters is generally not going to be a good target for somebody who's looking to not get caught. So we definitely need to do that, because it'll not only help protect our children, but it'll also help encourage others to speak out more, and it'll help encourage societal change as well as legislative change, which both are very, very necessary in regards to this topic. So between 2015 and 2017, 242 files of reported SA were reopened out of 30,000 cases sent for review, where RCMP did not lay any charges. So here we have over 30,000 cases that were sent for review, where victims have reported SA and RCMP had laid no charges. So out of those cases, 242 files were reopened. And the reason for this was because consistent deficiencies were found in how these cases were handled, including some instances of investigators failing to interview victims and subjects. I'm going to read that again, because consistent deficiencies were found in how these cases were handled, including some instances of investigators failing to interview victims and subjects. The reopening of these cases resulted in 26 charges being sworn. So things are happening. I think it's a start. So again, this all took place where the reopening cases between 2015 and 2017, where the Me Too movement was very in our faces and people were paying attention and talking about it. So I would suspect that had a huge encouragement on why these cases were even reviewed to begin with, and why so many were even reopened, and we now have 26 new charges being laid. So that is definitely a huge win for those victims and society as a whole, those communities. So within 2 weeks of March of 2022, reports to cybertip.ca increased by 40%. By the end of the year of 2022, that figure rose to 106%. Again, these numbers are astronomical, in my opinion. So from 2010 to 2017, there was a 288% increase in police reported child pornography incidents. And we're seeing online abuse of children increasing again by even more. We're looking at almost 106% in less than 1 year just in 2020, and we know it's increased even more in 2021. So of every 1,000 cases reported, of every 1,000 cases that happen, or every 1,000 assaults that are believed to happen, only 33 of those are ever reported to police. Again, SA is the most underreported violent crime in Canada. And this is why this is where we're seeing these, is when the numbers actually on a piece of paper, it really paints a picture. So of every 1,000 assaults, only 33 are ever reported to the police. And then of these 33 reported cases, only 12 of those will result in charges by police. And then out of those 12, only 6 of those are actually prosecuted by the Crown Attorney's Office. So then that means it will go to court for a plea and potentially a trial. And out of those 6 cases, about only 3 of those will result in a conviction. So out of 1,000 assaults, you'll have about 3 convictions. Out of the 33 reports from those 1,000 assaults, only about 2% of those 33 are proven to be false reports. Looking at these numbers really puts a lot into perspective, and I hope that anybody who's listening to this really understands how much of an issue this is and how important it is that we start taking the necessary steps as a society to start making some changes here. So, information for communities regarding stats and reporting. Offenders commonly overpower victims through threats and intimidation tactics. Moreover, many victims lack the capacity to appreciate or understand they are being assaulted. Most common reasons for not reporting child SA is children felt that they would not be believed. Children felt ashamed or embarrassed. Children did not know that they could report abuse. Children did not have family supports to help them report abuse. And children did not know they were being abused. All of these things are things that people within these children's lives, adults within these children's lives could do something to prevent just by being involved and aware. So again, educating yourselves and your children is important. We spoke a couple weeks ago about how the average child must report their abuse to at least 3 different adults before they are believed and they are helped. So again, having a proper support system for your children is very important, and making sure that they understand that telling is important, but not only do they tell, but they keep telling. This is why, unfortunately. Hopefully we can see some changes and shifts in that in the future, where we have less people questioning victims and more people questioning offenders. Right now, we still see more people questioning the victims and less people questioning the offenders. So hopefully we can do something to change that, because in my opinion, that's an issue. Most common reasons for not reporting an SA to police. So this is just in general. So the first couple that I listed there are specific to children. These are just in general. So the most common reasons for, say, adults to not report to police: 71% of victims felt that the crime was minor or not worth reporting. 67% felt that the incident was a private matter. Again, most offenders are known to the victim, so over 80% of abuse technically is a private matter. Police like to call them isolated incidents. So these offenders are not a threat to the public, just a threat to everyone they love and trust. So apparently that makes them safer. And unfortunately, victims have this same mentality of, this is a private matter. It only affects me. Therefore, it's not as big of a deal. That's not always the case. Most offenders do have multiple victims. So victims should definitely question that a little bit more and not just assume that it only affects them, because it potentially could be affecting other children as well. Another reason why it's always important to report. Reporting could protect others as much as it can protect yourself. 63% of victims felt no one was harmed. 45% of victims had concerns with the justice system, including not wanting the hassle of dealing with the police. 43% of victims felt that police would not consider the SA important enough. And 40% of victims felt that the offender would not be convicted or adequately punished. As we saw with the numbers I gave you earlier regarding how many offenders are actually convicted in comparison to how many are reported, I'd say that that's a fairly reasonable concern for victims to have when it comes to lacking faith in our judicial system and feeling that there's not going to be any consequence for the offender anyways, therefore, what's the point? In my opinion, I think that it's still important that victims still speak out and still report. I always tell victims to expect the worst, but know that they're doing the right thing anyways. When offenders get reported, it definitely helps prevent them from offending again, even if they aren't convicted, because now they've been caught once. The potential and the concern for being caught again increases. So I'd like to think that that reduces the risk of children around those offenders who never do see convictions but are reported. And it's also important for the courts to see more and more of these cases coming through their doors. It's more important for the police to receive more and more of these reports. It's important for our government to be aware that these numbers are going up, that more people are speaking out, that this is a real issue. The more people report, the more likely it is to get the people who need to pay attention, so we can do the things that we need to do to help fix some of these issues within these systems and within society, to better support victims in dealing with these matters in a way that is beneficial for themselves as well as the rest of society. Young and vulnerable females are most likely to be abused. All people are potential victims, regardless of gender, age, race, religion, sexual orientation, education, or physical description. The effects of SA are far-reaching and can severely impact individuals' emotional stability, employment, the ability to form and maintain adult relationships. Most statistics show approximately 2% or less of assaults, again, are false reports. That's something we really need to stress to people to help break this stigma surrounding this topic and these forms of abuse and these reports of abuse. So some information specific to offenders. About 50%, just over 50% of offenders are married or in long-term relationships. Many offenders appear to live highly normal, functioning lives and are otherwise upstanding citizens. Nearly 70% of CSA offenders have between 1 and 9 victims. Nearly 70% of CSA offenders have between 1 and 9 victims. That's a lot, in my opinion. 70% is a really high number, and for that many of them to have between 1 and 9 victims. Again, these are Canadian numbers, so that's very concerning to me. So at least 20% have anywhere from 10 to 40 victims. Again, this is why it is so important that people start reporting, because there's a good likelihood, based on these numbers, that you're not the only one. And it might not just be you that you're protecting. You might not even be being abused anymore, but somebody else still could be. So in Canada, there's no statute of limitations on reporting SA. Anybody can report at any time, even if it's 50 years down the road. Most victims don't report until years later, especially children. I believe it's only around 40% of children actually report their abuse before they're adults. Over 60% of them wait until they're adults before they report their abuse. And out of the 40% that do report as children, most of them actually don't report until about 2 years after the abuse took place. So it's very rare for a child to report their abuse at the time of it happening. A lot of times it's years after the fact, or most of the time it's not until they become an adult. And even for adults to report SA, a lot of times you're looking at years down the road before that report is even made. This is something that we definitely need to change, and by encouraging victims to report their abuse and showing support for victims who report their abuse, we can help encourage that change. An average serial CSA offender may have as many as 400 victims in their lifetime. 92% of police reported SAs on children involve production and or distribution of child PE videos and film, photos, inappropriate child stuff. 46% of offenders who were released from prison were rearrested within 3 years. It appears to be uncommon that the victim's choice of clothing does not increase or decrease their chance of being assaulted, as most offenders cannot remember what the victim was even wearing. So the idea of a woman was asking for it, or was implying something by wearing a certain outfit, or dressing provocatively, is actually proven to be a false understanding, as most offenders cannot even describe or remember what their victim was wearing at the time of the attack. And as many as 75% of assaults involve some pre-planning by the offender. So again, the idea that anybody brought that on themselves, or implied something in the moment, is again a false idea. It's a false narrative. It's a false impression that we're giving ourselves, because as we see in the statistics that are available to us, 75% of those offenses actually involved some pre-planning by the offender. Based on all of the research that I personally did, I could not find anything that is available that results in any cure for these types of offenders. Nothing has been developed. There are therapies that can reduce the incidences of a person committing CSA, but nothing that prevents it. So basically what this means is certain therapies and treatments state they have the potential to help reduce the amount of times an offender may offend, but cannot prevent it entirely. So instead of maybe offending 20 times with this therapy or treatment, they may be able to reduce that to, say, 6 times. I'm just throwing out numbers as an example here, but can never actually prevent it entirely, just help reduce it. So we definitely can use some more research and more work in that department, in my opinion. There are a lot of things that our government can be doing that they're not. And again, we'll get into a lot more of that next week. And there's a lot more that we as a society and as parents can do that I like to think is starting to happen more. We're starting to see more and more parents openly discussing these topics and being comfortable with discussing these topics and wanting to educate themselves, wanting to educate their children. A lot of times this just comes down to having the proper resources and information to be able to do it. I know one of the things that parents always say to me is, how do I even educate my child on something like this when I was never taught about this as a child? My parents never discussed this with me. This was never something that was brought up. We were taught stranger danger. That was basically the extent of it. And beyond that, a lot of parents don't even know where to start. So we started providing these information packages for parents, which just provides information and a lot of resources to help them be able to not only educate themselves, but be able to educate their children in age-appropriate ways. We do have information in there, which I didn't touch on today, that is specific to how to react and things that you should and shouldn't say when a child does report abuse to you. I think that's a really good little worksheet for every parent and adult who's around children to read, just be aware of. It's a 1-page little worksheet. It's about a 2-3 minute read. Very simple, but the information in it is great information. They explain why you should and shouldn't say certain things, how you should react, and why you should and shouldn't react certain ways, which is very important information, and that really helps encourage people to speak out and report their abuse to authorities after they've reported it to a trusted adult. Because reporting it to somebody that you trust and then reporting it to a police officer are two very different things, especially when you're looking at a child. So we need to make sure that we're supporting them properly and in the right ways to be able to do that. We actually just updated our information packages last week. So anybody who sent us an email looking for one of those in the last 2 weeks, I have not sent those yet, so those will get sent out this week. I wanted to add a bunch of information. I added a lot of information regarding protecting children online, as that was definitely lacking, and I added some more information to our pamphlet about protecting children in the community. So there's 2 different packages that we can provide to you. We can provide those to you by email. We just provide PDFs that you can open up and save to your computer. You're free to share those with anybody you would like. And if anybody would like a copy or has received a copy in the past and would like one of our updated copies, please feel free to send us an email. That's at survivorsfightingforchange@gmail.com. And that is right there at the bottom of the screen there for anybody who is interested. And again, if you know somebody else who might be interested, feel free to send them that information and have them reach out. If you would prefer a paper copy sent to you and not by email, then feel free to reach out to us, comment, or send us a message through social media, or send us an email with your address and we can mail a copy to you as well. That's an option. Again, next week, guys, is our last week. We're going to be wrapping up our topic of our awareness campaign, I guess, in honor of SAAM, so SA Awareness Month. And with that, I'm just going to double check. I know that we're going to be discussing all of our, so societal change and law reform is going to be week 4. So I'll be posting a couple links next week regarding some information that we can do as communities, as well as more information about what we can start lobbying for in regards to change regarding legislation, so federally and also provincially within some of our acts. And then there's also going to be some information coming in the future about things that some of the rural communities can potentially start doing to help prevent abuse of children in many forms. We're doing some great research about some stuff there as well. Next month, guys, we're going to have a busy summer. We have a lot of stuff coming up this year. We're hoping to get back out to do some more markets. We're hoping to get out into some more communities across Edmonton to do some community awareness events, some child self-defense classes, and parent info sessions. Of course, this is all free. We like getting out into the community and talking to as many parents and guardians as possible. And of course, we'll have our information packages with us while we're doing this. We're also hoping to do some events with some other great organizations, so stay tuned for information about that. And we have a couple of great videos that we're also going to be posting next month. One is going to be a teen talk where we'll have a criminal lawyer joining us to discuss information for teens, where we'll be going over consent as well as online activity, what teens should know about their liabilities, responsibilities, things they can and can't do, shouldn't do, or should be careful of, to ensure that they're not getting themselves in any trouble, or that if something is happening to them, they know how to respond correctly and they understand what that means, what's happening to them, and what they can do about it. So that will be a really good talk, and we'll post something for that to give people some heads up so they're aware and can join us for that. I'm excited for that. And if anybody has teens, this will be a safe chat. Teens can definitely watch this live that we do next month for that. So our teen talk, they're more than welcome to join. Parents of teens or even preteens, feel free, jump in, join us. If you have any questions, send us those ahead of time or watch it live where you can ask questions and we can have the legal counsel that's available answer a lot of those questions for you during that video. That will be a really nice thing to do. And if your teens have any questions too, you can ask them, like, what questions do you have about consent or about online stuff, asking for photos, sending photos, stuff like that, legalities, consequences of doing that kind of stuff. And again, what your responsibilities are in participating and stuff like that. Ask if they have questions and get those out to us. We'd be happy to answer those for everybody. And anything else, again, always reach out and keep an eye out. Like I said, we're hoping to have lots of events and stuff happening this summer. And we also do have an online silent auction that we'll be hosting through our Facebook page at the end of May. So keep an eye out for that. We've already received some really nice donations from some local businesses here around Edmonton and Edmonton area. So if there's any other local businesses interested in participating in this, we would love to have you jump on board. Feel free to reach out to us. And for any of our supporters, feel free to keep an eye out for that. These fundraisers help us cover our operating costs, which we like to keep fairly low. And they also help cover the costs for the child ID kits that we're going to be distributing this summer, as well as insurance for our nonprofit so we can get into some bigger venues, which will be exciting if we can get into some larger venues, hopefully next winter. Then we can do more over the winter time and not just have events during the summer and early fall. Be nice to be able to do more stuff throughout the entire year. So we appreciate the support and help with any of that. And if anybody, again, has any questions, definitely reach out to us at survivorsfighting@gmail.com. Have a good night, everybody, and I hope that you found this information helpful, and I hope that you learned something new, and I hope that you start educating the children in your lives to help better protect them. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.